Fans, have we got a great one for you today? Well, as promised, we've been teasing it for the first couple episodes that we're going to have some icons. We're going to have some special guests, some players from the sporting world, players, people from media and entertainment. Right now, what's trending in the NFL is the running back. The running game has returned to the NFL. Passing is down. You see Nick Saban and Pat McAfee speaking about it. It's on multiple talk shows that the Derrick Henrys of the world and Alvin Kamara, men like that, are difference makers. Obviously, Saquon Barkley in Philadelphia. The era that I remember in my younger days, you had the Emmitt Smiths, the Walter Paytons, Earl Campbells. It was a running league. And then obviously as they wanted to get scoring up and kind of more excitement, a lot of rule changes went to enhance the passing game. Certainly more exciting. But what happened is that it became so critical to have great receivers, great quarterback play. You started drafting, changing the level of position monetarily for the cornerback, the quarterback, the receiver. And believe it or not, a couple of years ago, some very talented running backs in the league, guys like Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, they couldn't get signed. Le'Veon Bell from the Steelers. People just felt that with zone schemes, you could kind of put anybody back there. Don't know how true that is. I think a great running back does make a difference. But with all that said, they started doing different coverages, really kind of umbrella, Tampa 2, deep safeties. And now, because of the depth of the defenses and getting those great edge rushers to pressure the quarterback, the strategy has kind of, what's old is new again, what's new is old again. The running back is a featured player in a lot of these offenses and a necessary player in a lot of these offenses. Certainly, you see the moves that the Baltimore Ravens made, maybe feeling that they were still a piece away, salting games away to win the AFC Championship, and they go and get a guy like Derrick Henry. So with all of that that's trending, all of that that's happening in the NFL in today's game and strategy, we're going to do for Top 10 with JC, top 10 greatest running backs of all time. And one of the criteria is you do have to have completed playing. So any great running backs that we're talking about that are in today's NFL, don't know if they'd be on the list or not, but they're not eligible. You do have to have finished up your career. These are my top 10 people that I've seen, and what we're going for are more complete backs that, you don't have to take off the field on third down. They can block, they can catch, great runners of the football. Look, we know that there are tremendous running backs in the history of the NFL. To only pick 10, it's inevitable that a fan base or someone is going to have a jersey on the wall of a guy who's not on this list. And here comes the pushback. I want to hear from you. If you want to be angry about it, be angry about it. I certainly want to debate it and talk. And if you give us permission, we'll air some of your, comments on screen. We'll pick it up in the next episode. But, don't forget on socials at Top 10 with JC. For this channel, please like and subscribe. Visit our website, top10withjc.com. And if you want to send us an email, you can certainly click within the website or just send us something directly, top10withjc@gmail.com. As always, our episodes are sponsored and brought to you by b1.com, all natural transdermal patch, which, worn by a lot of today's athletes, including running back Devin Singletary of the New York Giants. Hope to have him on as a guest maybe during his bye week, but he uses our product currently in the NFL. And, obviously probably aspires to be like some of the men we're going to mention on this list. And then at the end of this list, we have a real special guest, someone who we believe belongs in the Hall of Fame, and someone who we think we're going to prove their case that they should be in the Hall of Fame. And the list just came out about a week or two ago, maybe 10 days, the senior nominees who are still eligible to be voted in. and he is on that list, thankfully. Now let's see if we can help get him in, and we'll be talking to him. Ironically enough, he was visiting us. He joined the podcast from the Hall of Fame. He was out there. So we're going to leave that a little dangling, so that we get to him in a little bit. But for right now, let's get to it. Again, just to continue to reiterate, this is not a ranking. This is not who's the best, who's number one. This is just a Mount Rushmore style. We're just listing 10 in no particular order, not alphabetically, not my favorites, just how we happen to grab them. Certainly some might be a little bit more decorated than others, but we're not listing it that way. It's just they're on my list. So number one, and I'm sure this person would be a number one for a lot of people, but we're not ranking him. We're just listing him. Our first running back, top 10 all time, the great Barry Sanders. So, Barry Sanders was, such a unique player because he just was the quintessential you couldn't tackle him. I don't know if untackleable is a word, but it should be. And certainly when you're describing Barry Sanders, that's him. Every running back has a kind of a distinct quality, whether it's in tremendous speed, tremendous power, but the juke moves, I mean, he was the human, joystick, the human, Madden controller, just incredible, was great at Oklahoma State. Obviously, with the Detroit Lions, it needs no introduction what he did there, spent his whole career there. Easily, had he continued to play, would have retired with the all-time rushing title. When he abruptly retired, people kind of were shocked. He absolutely had gas in the tank. Part of it was that the Detroit Lions as a team just didn't really enjoy a lot of success. And I think as that kind of, put more and more weight on his mind about what he's doing, and he still is, really healthy. Some people want to still be able to walk away from the game with a clear head and a healthy body. And certainly I think he did that. You see the stats up here on the screen: 10-time Pro Bowler, 6-time first team All-Pro, MVP, 1997. Of course, a Hall of Famer, 15,000 yards, 99 touchdowns, just absolutely a joy to watch. Appointment television, even if you weren't a fan of the Lions, if you knew they were playing, you wanted to watch. Think about all the great Thanksgiving games. We're going to see a clip right here of some of his great moments. So Barry Sanders, one of the top 10 greatest running backs of all time. Don't think we're going to have much of a debate or pushback on that one. Number two, Marshall Faulk. Marshall Faulk was the most dynamic running back I ever saw in my life. He had the juke moves of a Barry Sanders, but he also had elite top end speed. Barry was definitely fast, and I never really saw Barry get caught from behind, but Marshall Faulk, when he was in the clear, he ran away from people. The incredible thing about Marshall Faulk is that he, again, was that every down back. He could block. He could catch the ball out of the backfield. Think about today's NFL. You want that 1,000-yard plus runner. You want that 1,000-yard plus receiver. 10, 15, 20 million to Saquon Barkley, 30 million to the Jamar Chase, to the CD Lambs of the world. And yet Marshall Faulk, 1,000 yards receiving, 1,000 yards rushing was almost like the norm. Just incredible. 2000 NFL MVP, world champion, 7-time Pro Bowler, of course, Hall of Famer, did it equally with the Colts and the Rams. And just, again, appointment television, so incredible with his abilities. And, again, seeing some of his clips right here, what he did. But Marshall Faulk, absolutely the quintessential do-it-all running back. Number 3 on the list, many might consider one of the greatest runners, but because of his ability on the field, he could throw it, he could block, his leadership. A lot of people call him one of the top football players, regardless of position of all time, and that sweetness, the great Walter Payton. Walter Payton played his entire career with the Chicago Bears. Still remember the day that he, rushed and broke Jim Brown's all-time record. He was, considered the greatest running back at that time. One of the unique things about him is when you got down to the goal line, he literally could leap over the entire line. Didn't have to even use power. But look at some of the clips here. He's got incredible power. Pro Bowler, NFL MVP, Super Bowl champion. Certainly one of the shames of that Super Bowl was, not getting him a touchdown, gave it to Refrigerator Perry. We all know that. Walter Payton has a very prestigious award named after him because of the kind of man he was off the field, the things that he did within his career. The Walter Payton Award, many NFL players, and that's probably the ultimate respect, not from the media, but the players themselves, regard receiving the Walter Payton Award right up there with receiving league MVP, one of the most prestigious honors. And when you look at past winners of the award, on their jersey, they have the emblem of the Walter Payton Award. That's how much it means to them. And, certainly an icon in the NFL, an icon in Chicago. And to think about, that he played, in a smaller school, HBCU, and then, what he did in the NFL, a testament to his heart, to his training, and one of the greatest of all time, I think, in anybody's book. Number 4, the one who was, and still is in many people's book, the greatest of all time, and that's Jim Brown. Jim Brown was, again, someone who had it. He had great speed, but he had great power. What's the greatest ability, many people say, as an athlete? Availability. Never missed a game. The guy just didn't miss games. And you think about the era that he played in, where you didn't have all the padding, didn't play with a lot of padding, which was just another part of his bravado. And he would just run over people just as easily as run away from people. The passing game in that era wasn't that big, so not saying that he couldn't be a great receiver out of the backfield. It just wasn't a part of that era of football. But in case you doubt his athleticism and his skills, he was an All-American in lacrosse in college at Syracuse. So this is someone who just had a multitude of skill sets, very similar to Barry Sanders in that he left football with a lot in the tank, still obviously of his right mind, of his right body, despite the hits that he took. Went on to pursue an acting career. Again, the charisma, the bravado, easily, a transition for him. Did well, some iconic films. And, one of the things that can't be underestimated to mention when you're talking about Jim Brown is obviously his advocacy, civil rights, social justice, just the way as an activist, the things that he did to speak up in that era for rights was as important as anything he did on the field. Certainly we're not taking anything off the field for any of our list, but when you understand the greatness of that man, it would be an injustice not to mention how special he was off the field, in addition to easily one of the greatest running backs in the history of football. And again, I think he would be on just about anybody's list. That brings us to the midway point. Number 5, LaDainian Tomlinson. Maybe a surprise for some. For me, very Marshall Faulk-like. Did not have the team success that Marshall had, but the Chargers. Although the Chargers now with Jim Harbaugh, their fortunes may be changing, but the Chargers have been a hard luck club for a long time. Shout out my friend back east. I don't know if he wants his name on the podcast, but he knows who he is. Lives evil and cruel deaths every year, watching the Chargers give games away. But with all that said, certainly one of the greatest Chargers, one of the great NFL players of all time, LaDainian Tomlinson, played a few years with the New York Jets. Did some things there. But, his credentials and his numbers, 145 touchdowns. Again, someone who was a 1,000-yard receiver out of the backfield, as much as he was, perennially going to give you 1,000 yards rushing. He could block. Just an all-around football player, a difference maker. He had the juke moves, and yet he had the great speed to run away from you as well. Use that phrase, appointment television. Spectacular things happened when you watched the game featuring the Chargers and LaDainian Tomlinson. And while some people may have other people ahead of him, for me, because we're talking about the dynamic position and being able to do multiple things on a football field, he makes my top 10. And in case you forgot, it's actually called Top 10 with JC. But here's where, there might be some pushback, and I'm looking forward to reading comments, either, staying with me and solidarity that he belongs on this list, or tell me who you would have over him. But he's on my list of greatest of all time. Moving on to number 6, the all-time leading rusher. I mean, how do you not have him on the list? Emmitt Smith. Emmitt Smith of the Dallas Cowboys, and I have a love-hate relationship with the Cowboys. I'm smart enough to understand what an iconic franchise it is. I'm smart enough to understand some of the great teams that they've had. Tom Landry, an ex-Giant, was the head coach. Jimmy Johnson, really a fan of his. Troy Aikman, still a fan of his. Obviously, the great Roger Staubach, from Navy, Heisman Award winner. There's just too much good about the Dallas Cowboys as a sports fanatic that I am for me to hate on them. But I'm a Giants fan, and probably one of the all-time, punch in the guts was when Emmitt Smith separated his shoulder the last game of the year for the division. Winner, goes on, loser goes home. And probably one of the most courageous performances I've ever seen, to have a one arm literally dangling. I mean, what's a separated shoulder? It's not connected. It's not something you just pop in. And he's playing running back. He's taking a hit. When he gets tackled, he's going to the ground. There's only so many needles and painkillers you can give him. And he felt it and still put up, over 100, 30, 40 yards, whatever it was, in overtime. They get the win. They beat the Giants. But again, I'm smart enough to understand as a sports fan how iconic a performance that was. Retires with over 18,000 yards. Think about the separation he has from some of these great players on this list. 3, 4, 5,000 yards separation. Just incredible. The year with the Arizona Cardinals, don't even really want to mention it. It's one of those things where a player still thinks he's got a little bit left and the team doesn't want him, and he signs somewhere else, like a Joe Namath with the Rams or something like that. But, he's a Dallas Cowboy. That's how he's in the Hall of Fame. 164 rushing touchdowns. He just had that ability to find the extra yard, certainly on 4th and 1s. We don't want to, forget that he did play behind behind one of the greatest offensive lines in NFL history, which obviously made his job easier. But that doesn't take away from how great he was. He was great in college. Certainly he didn't have, Larry Allen and Stepnoski and those guys blocking for him at the University of Florida, and he was amazing there. So, let's not get it twisted. Yes, great players do play with great teams. That's how we hear about them. But he had an incredible offensive line, and to his credit, maximize his ability. 3-time Super Bowl champion, Hall of Famer, 1993 NFL MVP. Emmitt Smith, easily one of the greatest running backs of all time. Number 7. Number 7 is going to be controversial for many reasons, probably outside of football. But we're here to mention the top 10 running backs, not the 10 greatest human beings, not the top 10 people without controversy. This was a hard one for me because I certainly comprehend what's going to be said about having someone like this on the list. At some point when you're doing these lists, you have to kind of really drill into the numbers and distinguish, are you mentioning performance on the field, or we're taking in totality who they are as humans? Maybe if he did what he did prior to being elected to the Hall of Fame, maybe he wouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. I don't know. It's possible, he would get kept out. But, right now we're just talking about his football. So just want to mention that, but let's just talk about football. That's what the list is about, top 10 running backs. So look, first player ever to rush for 2,000 yards. Remember, he did it in a 14-game season. Let's not forget that. Wasn't 16 games. Great speed. He was a great running back at USC, Heisman Trophy winner, five-time Pro Bowler. Didn't play with great teams. Certainly a pretty solid offensive line in Buffalo, but someone who during his era was one of the greatest football players, let alone running backs, and just someone who you have to understand he gained all those yards, did all those things, where Buffalo didn't have this iconic quarterback receiver duo. Wasn't even that kind of a league in the 70s. And think about, everyone keying on him, and he still put up those kind of numbers year after year after year. Eventually some injuries, and obviously someone else who, took the Jim Brown route of, transferring into celebrity status. We all know the Hertz commercials, Naked Gun movies. He's done some movies where, listen, he was a beloved figure outside of the sports world prior to the tragedies that he convicted or not. But I think there's enough evidence there to say that again. With all that said, and again, I don't want to get into all of it. That's why I'm not mentioning. I'm not afraid to mention it. It's just that's not what this particular episode is. I mean, it might be a top 10 episode of top 10, falls from grace, and he'll be on that list. And then we'll go into more detail about, his wife and, with Goldman and all that kind of stuff. But just want to keep it focused on sports and football for this particular episode. That's what it's about. Number 8, the great Earl Campbell. Earl Campbell was I don't know what you call him. He was a freight train. He was a freight train, and 220 pounds. Just carved out of stone. Just look at him in a uniform. Just a total hulk of a man. And yet you watch some of these highlights. Look at his speed. That dynamic mix of speed and power was just something that people marveled at his entire career. Obviously, you take a bunch of hits, 300 carries a season, multiple people, teeing off on you. He looks it now in his later life, but certainly just one of the all-time warriors. 9,000, yards, not the yardage that some of the other players have on this list. 74 touchdowns, a lot of guys at 99, 100, but 3-time NFL rushing leader in an era that was all about the run. 1979 NFL MVP, never got his team, above the Steelers, played in that division. Certainly would have loved to have seen him in a Super Bowl, but by all accounts, one of the greatest runners in NFL history, and certainly someone who deserves to be on this list. And at the time he was playing, he was the man. I mean, as great as Walter Payton and a lot of those guys were, when he was on Monday Night Football, a game of his was going to be televised. All eyes tuned in just to watch to see who he would run over. And then the ability after that to run away from people was, again, just an incredible athlete. Started Texas, and he's on my list of all-time greats. That brings us to number 9. Number 9 was a very dynamic player, someone who, he had a slight frame, and yet he was very physical down at the goal line, just a knack for getting the ball over the goal line, whether it was with his speed, his leaping ability, or the ability to kind of, take the tough yard, not fumble. 123 total touchdowns, most ever rushing touchdowns when he retired. Of course, Raiders and Chiefs, we see this clip from the Super Bowl, him with the Raiders, that iconic move up the middle, running away from everybody. Showed him in a Chiefs jersey because I know that for him, he, really had a falling out with the Raiders. So didn't want to do him like that, putting a Raiders jersey up there. But I certainly remember him more with the Raiders than the Chiefs. But he had some great years with the Chiefs. Nobody can deny that. took him to some playoff games, did some great things. But by any metric, any measure, one of the greatest of all time. And again, Heisman Trophy winner out of USC, Super Bowl MVP. Uh, by any way you want to shape it, someone who can catch the ball, someone who was not afraid to block, and certainly someone who was a complete football player, a difference maker, and one of the top 10 of all time. And last but not least, and this will probably be one of the more controversial picks when you think about some of the players who are not on that list, and that's on this list, and that's Curtis Martin. So again, probably one of the more controversial picks that we're going to have on this list, and that's Curtis Martin. Curtis Martin is someone who, for me, was just a winning part of a franchise. He was a leader. He'd get you the tough yards. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He did not come off on third down. He basically, was part of the Patriots, part of the Jets, two franchises that went to, the Patriots went to the Super Bowl, lost to the Packers, the Jets, AFC Championship game. This man is just part of a winning franchise, and he is someone who gets you the tough yards. He gets into the end zone. He could receive it out of the backfield. He could do every single thing that you want from a top tier running back. Didn't have the top end speed, wasn't going to run away from a lot of guys, but he had the shiftiness and the power to break off a 25, 40, 50-yard run. And again, someone who, when you're looking at some of the running backs that didn't make the list, Gale Sayers got hurt, didn't have a long time career, but while he was playing was incredible, obviously. There are other running backs that I can appreciate you might want to see on this list instead of a Curtis Martin. But, for me, he was just so much a part of a winning culture, of winning football play from the running back position. And certainly if he's good enough to be in Bill Parcells, who I regard as one of the top 4 or 5 coaches in the history of football, if he's good enough to be with Bill Parcells and, Parcells mentioning how much he was a key in those Patriot and Jet teams. And you look at how much they, in my opinion, really overachieved. I never thought they were great teams, but I think what they did have was someone they could hand the ball to and would get the key first down, would make the key block. And I put him in my top 10, maybe some bias because he was someone I got to watch personally during, my lifetime. Did not see Jim Taylor, obviously, the Jim Taylors and the Paul Hornings, they're going to be people that, maybe Packer fans are going to say, how do you not have them on that list? I understand it. Certainly, era and styles are going to play into lists of this nature. But for me, Curtis Martin belongs on this list. So that's Jerry's top 10 list of great running backs of all time, and someone who certainly deserves to be in the Hall of Fame with those 10 greats, and who actually joins us from the Hall of Fame right now is number 24, ex-Cardinal, ex-Giant, ex-Miami Hurricane, in case you didn't know, O.J. Anderson. 24, how you doing, sir?
I am doing well. How you doing? Thank you for that nice intro. Appreciate that.
Appreciate you. Listen, so this is a real treat for me. Longtime Giants season ticket holder. Watched you play up close and personal. Been to several Super Bowls. The joy of my life watching the Giants. Put a couple of party trophies on the shelf. Right now, there is a resurgence of the NFL running back. As a matter of fact, Pat McAfee and Nick Saban were speaking yesterday that because of all the too high safety, the shell coverages to take away these vertical passing game, which has been dominating the league the last couple of years. The last couple of weeks into the season, the running back has, had a resurgence, and those statistics are more dominant than the passing yards. When you played, the running back position was so important. Um, when you come out of Miami University, let's start right at the beginning. You're the all-time leading rusher. You just missed Howard Schellenberger by 1 year. That great 30 for 30 documentary highlights the great Miami Hurricanes. Are you ever upset that you kind of, I don't know if you even appear in that Miami Hurricane, and yet you're in the Miami Hurricane Hall of Fame? Talk to us about what it was like coming out of a program that now is such a national stage, but at that time maybe wasn't the football powerhouse.
Well, when I decided to go to Miami, at the time, Miami was playing all the top tens and all the top teams in the country, and that was one of my main reasons for going to Miami, and also that it gave players an opportunity to go pro. And I had offers from Oklahoma, Ohio State. I had all the big schools recruiting me at the time, but I was a mama's boy, and I wanted to stay close to home. And the fact that I had a chance to do something different, meaning change the narrative. Miami hadn't had a winning season for years prior
Right.
to I'm going there, and our first 3 years were tough. We went 2-8, 3-8, and then my senior year we went 6-5 and barely missed a bowl game. And the only reason why we didn't was we had a chance at 500. We were playing Tulane down in the dome, and had we won, then we'd have been 6-5, and then on our way to play another team, we've been 6-4 maybe, and then we'd have had another game to be 7-4. Those were what we were trying to do, but then we did turn it around, and then I was graduating, and Howard came in, and he went to the athletic department to see if I had another year because my freshman year, I ended up starting the third game of the season and playing as a freshman and led the team in rushing as a freshman with like 300 plus yards. And that was to tell you how bad our team was back then. And I came in late, but yeah, I told Howard, I said, Howard, I'm gone, man. I don't think I have any more eligibility, and they had predicted that I'll probably be drafted, not the first round, but maybe the third or fourth. Yeah. So, I wasn't no more for me to do. Saban had put me in the perfect position to be a professional. He brought in the professional offense unit for us to learn, and that's what we did. So I was pro ready when I got to St. Louis. I was pro ready, and I think, and the reason why I ended up to St. Louis, I think, because of when I was at Miami, our head coach at the time became the athletic director, and then he left, and I think he went to the Cardinals, a running back coach, and he the one, I think Pete Elliott was his name, I think it is.
So right away, he already knew he knew what he was getting, and
right, because
senior,
so
you become the first running back in Miami history to actually crack 1,000 yards, because they've had some great running backs, obviously, since your graduation, but the first to ever have 1,000-yard rushing season at the University of Miami was you. Yeah, and you'll always hold that.
Yeah, I didn't even know that until because I knew Chuck Foreman. I almost broke it my sophomore year. I know I was close to doing it my sophomore year. And then it took my senior year to do it. But I held the record, all-time leading rusher, for 35 years at Miami.
35 years. Yes, sir. Yes,
yeah,
sir.
Yeah, 35 years.
Again, we're not talking about just fan favorites or the fact that I'm, I got, blue running through my veins. I saw the great, quote you had during, although you, had some great moments with the Cardinals, and obviously that's who drafted you. Once a giant, always a giant. And, so you got the Giants hat on. And by the way, congratulations for those who don't know, the New York Giants just listed their top 100 players of all time, an incredible franchise. All the length of time that the players have come through there, so to be listed as a top 100, and you were 51, so you were right there, listed with all the greats. Certainly, I would have you on that list. I think anybody who's a Giant fan would. with all of that, you get your career started in St. Louis, and right away, you're offensive rookie of the year. You're an immediate impact player. You have a really interesting dynamic of your career. And if I get this wrong, please correct me. You start out as that dynamic back. You then become a short yardage back so that you are valuable to the team and can make sure you're still with the Giants. And then later on, you actually have to turn back into the every down back again, and then crack 1,000 yards in 1989. And then, of course, you have another great season in 1990, taking the team to the Super Bowl. What is it like to have multiple lives as a running back wrestler? What does it say about your prep and your mentality to be that great team guy as a back?
Well, going back to what you said, like my rookie year, I set every possible record that a rookie could ever do in the NFL.
Mhm.
I was NFC Player of the Year, which people don't remember back then, and I was first voted Pro Bowl starter twice, 79 and 80, which was in front of guys like Walter Payton, John Riggins, uh, Chuck
Absolutely.
Munson, Wilbur Montgomery, Tony Dorsett. So I was, and Walter Payton. I was that guy. I was the starter over all those guys for 2 years straight in a row.
Yep.
But every year that I played, and this is my case, I'm gonna help you argue. Every year that I played as a starter, I went over 1,000 yards. I had 2 work stoppage in my career that didn't allow me to get to 1,000 yards. I
That's no
started in
joke.
79, 1,000 yards, 80, 1,000 yards, 81 over 1,000 yards. 82, we had a stop work season, and I came back and got as much as I could. 83 over 1,000 yards, 84 over 1,000 yards. 85, I get injured and miss 9 games. 86, I start my career off with the Cardinals. Later got traded the 5th game of the season. I went from 1-4 to 4-1.
Right.
And if you look at the records in 86, I really didn't play then in 86.
Right, because the Giants have Joe
87,
Marsh. They have
another,
a star. Yep.
right, they had Joe Marsh. So now you go to 87, another work stoppage. But then again, I wasn't playing anyway. So I didn't play. 88, I came back and was a utility back where I played short yardage and goal line.
Mm-hmm.
89, I became a starter, again, a full season, over 1,000
1,000 yards.
yards.
Yes, sir.
90, I started the season off, and then Rodney Hampton came in. He proved himself to be worthy, and then he get hurt in the playoff game. I come in and go over 100 yards, and we win the game.
In the
So
Super Bowl.
when I look at the statistics of all the guys who are below me that got in, and those who have played like 12 years, 40, they played consecutively those many years. I did not. Had I played, that's why I tell people, you want to see how good I was? Put my stats 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85. Take out 82 because it was a short season. Put my
OJ,
stats
hold on.
against any.
Ask, and you shall receive. I have
Go
them
ahead.
for you. Let's do it. You ready? Okay, so
Go ahead.
let's start with current backs. They say C-Mac, top running back in the league. He's going to go to the Hall of Fame. Let's take a look at his 5 full seasons. We even did him a favor and removed his injury season. So his 516 seasons, his 516 game seasons, 5,518 yards. By comparison, 16 game seasons full for OJ Anderson, 6,777 yards, a full 1,200 yards more. We took the full 8 seasons of Earl Campbell, who I consider in the top 4 or 5 running backs of all time, 9,335 yards. The top 8 seasons by comparison, OJ Anderson, 8,850. Not even a 500-yard difference. Oh, and by the way, OJ had over 1,500 more receiving yards than Earl Campbell, so all-purpose yards. By the way, at the time of his retirement, he was 7th all time in rushing yards, 8th in TDs. To this day, 32 years after his retirement, he is still 20th all times in rushing TDs. What are we talking about? Put this man in the Hall of Fame. The numbers are there. They're there for
Yo,
today's running back. They're there for yesterday's running back. I mean, it's not even close. So I
and you
appreciate
know, and I
this.
agree with you. I mean to cut you off. And you know,
No,
nothing against Terrell Davis. He just got in. I don't think he even close to what I've accomplished. I mean, he went for 2,000 yards, okay, and he was the league most valuable player, and he's the MVP. That's it. I was comeback player of the year. I'm a 2-time Pro Bowler, and I got over 10,000 rushing yards. He doesn't have 10,000 rushing yards. If you want to argue apples to apples, he doesn't have 10. He don't even have as many touchdowns as I had. Yet, no, again, no offense to him because he did what he did, and he got in because he got in. And I don't know it has to do with being on television or whatever, but he's in, he's in. I can't argue that fact. He's in. But what merit him getting in? What did he get in off of? Because if it's statistics, mine is just as equal as you mentioned with Earl and others who are in there. Now, if they talk about yardage, I get that. James, for instance, Jerome Bettis, for instance, they all got the yardage. I can't argue that if that's what you're basing it on. But then you also got it based on consecutive years playing, unlike work stoppage where I had. So again, I'm gonna always argue that fact that I didn't play 14 straight seasons. I did not. I played in 3 decades, and I played
and
against the best. I played against the best conference in the NFL when I came through the NFC East with the Cowboys, Washington, Philadelphia, and the Giants. We had 5 at the time when I came through. It was 5 in that league, and I played them twice a year.
yeah.
So with the blessing of Dick Vermeil, the blessing of Joe Gibbs, and the only reason why I don't have a blessing from Tom Landry is that he passed away, and Parcells and Belichick. Each one of those guys submitted a letter on my behalf to the Pro Football Hall of Fame saying, and the guy who didn't play football but one of the world's greatest athletes ever, Larry Holmes, the champ, submitted a letter on my behalf to the Hall of Fame about me being there 10 years ago.
Well,
And
I
now
got to.
we are resubmitting those same letters because somehow they dropped the package or they dropped the ball, if you want to call it. So we're resubmitting. We're building up. My guys out of St. Louis, Steve, and the crew out of St. Louis, they call it the OJ Train to Canton. These guys are doing just a phenomenal job for me in trying to get the committee to take a look at my stats and just look at it and ask yourself, why not?
No, listen, I think without a doubt, the numbers bear out your worthiness of being in the Hall of Fame. I think you hit the nail on the head that when we talk about somebody, like Terrell Davis, he has that similar kind of comparison to a Sandy Koufax, who got injured in the middle of his career. He was having a great career. So people just extrapolate out, oh, he's a Hall of Famer, but he didn't have the great numbers as the great pitchers. I think a lot of people feel that Terrell Davis, because of the migraines and some of the other things that he mentioned, may have short-circuited his career, but he was on the trajectory. But at the end of the day, that's not good enough. To your point,
Thank
your
you.
eye test,
Thank you.
to your point, your eye test, through no fault of your own, doesn't match up because you don't have this consecutive. One of your great assets was your availability. You had an injury here and there, but for the most part, you were available. The fact that we see seasons where you don't have these 16 started, 16 games played, was for 2 reasons. Number one, 2 different work stoppages, no fault of your own. And number 2, as the Cardinals saw that, they were not going to go anywhere and they have high priced players and they had a young Stump Mitchell coming in, they trade you to the Giants, which even at the time is unheard of, to trade players in conference. At that time, the Cardinals and the Giants in division. Cardinals and the Giants were in the same division, and the Giants did have a very competent starting running back in Joe Morris. So now you come to a team where it's not that you don't have the skill set or the legs or the wheels anymore, but the Giants obviously have an established running back. But kudos to the Giants for saying, hey, this is a very talented player. I know that you told the story that Jim Burt, who you knew from, your alma mater, Miami, was kind of like, saying, "Hey, how would you like to be here? Anyone can see your talent." And people forget because a lot of the lasting images of you, with that great bull rush, the upper forearm, to the Bills in the playoffs, that short yardage touchdown. People forget you were, a champion sprinter, track in high school, and you look at some of the video clips of your early years. You're taking it to the house. These are 60-yard breakaway runs. So I just think that a lot of your career, because it's again choppy, but not through anything that you did, people don't have that straight line. So what we have to look at are the numbers, and when we look at the numbers, on any level you look at, these are Hall of Fame numbers. Jim Taylor, nothing against Jim Taylor with the Green Bay Packers. You have him by 2,000 yards and who knows how many more touchdowns. So when we look at some of the players that are there, there's no denying that your numbers stack up. And then we have to look at accolades. NFC Player of the Year, All Pro, NFL MVP in the Super Bowl, comeback player of the year after you're able to have a full season again of, being the starter. It wasn't a health issue. It was that now Joe is out. And then when Rodney Hampton obviously went down with the leg injury, broke his leg actually, look how you step up in those crunch time games, because the Giants do not win that Super Bowl, not only from a performance standpoint, but a strategy standpoint. You have to grind the clock with someone who could move the sticks. And that Buffalo offense was so potent that strategy, it just doesn't work with anyone. You have to have an Otis Anderson type back to be able to do that. And oh, by the way, just another little thing about performance and showing up. Over 750 handles with the Giants, and by handles we mean both handoffs and passes out of the backfield. 3 fumbles all time. How's that for you give this man the ball, something good is going to happen, which. So I'm just a huge proponent. I do want to show you something, see if you've seen this.
Football legend Tom Flores, a.k.a. the Iceman, a.k.a. the first Latino quarterback and head coach ever, a.k.a. 4-time champ, a.k.a. why isn't he in the hall yet? Not cool. But Tom is. Do some chill, Tom. Classic Iceman. Anyway, Coors Light is going to do something about it.
You guys should put my picture on the can.
Way ahead of you, Coach.
I had more hair back then.
You're a handsome man, Grandpa.
So I wanted to show you that because a few years ago, a lot of people were advocating, why is Tom Flores not in the Hall of Fame? He's won Super Bowls. He has all the credentials. There's all these other coaches. It's an injustice. And Coors Light partnered with him and just went on a national campaign saying this is not a sentimentality thing. Yes, he will be the first Latino, and there are those other, things to celebrate. But just remove all of that away and just put up a blank face, and his numbers stack up. And sure enough, Tom Flores did eventually get that senior committee nod, and he's in the Hall of Fame. Is there any opportunity, as you're getting all these great other athletes and other people that to maybe have a corporation or someone partner with you in a campaign? I mean, by B1, we've made patches for your charity before, and I'm behind you, and we'll do everything we can. We'll make a commemorative patch. I just don't have the power that Coors Molson has. I don't have $2 billion behind me, but being that you're in a media market like the Giants and you are so celebrated and you are a Super Bowl MVP, is there an opportunity to maybe seek out that corporate message so that we get this platform raised and put you where you belong? And that's not eating at the cafeteria of the Hall of Fame, but an actual bust and a gold jacket at the Hall of Fame.
Well, I don't know any right now. I know O.J. Simpson took over the oranges, so I can't go that route. I can't get on an orange juice can because he dominated all of that. But that got to be something I can get on.
Well, we'll make some
somewhere,
we'll
somehow.
make some
Well, the problem you're having is that the NFL, one of the more wide open type of offense so that they can capture the young generation. And you don't capture the young generation when you have 3 yards, 2 yards, and a cloud of dust. Players like me and Derrick Henry, he's a dinosaur if you look at what's going on in the league now. And he's going to run into that similar position. He close to 10,000 yards and definitely a heck of a running back. But maybe overlooked. And then again, another issue that I have is that the writers that saw me play were young when I got started, at least mid-20s, mid-30s. So they all have passed away, are no longer around, but Jack Buck would have been a big advocate for me. And I think his son is trying to step up because his son did see me play because he was in St. Louis and he was young, but he remembered his dad speaking about me at the time. But that's another issue I have is that I'm outdated because the people who saw me play were doing the selection committee back then are no longer on the board. So I'm fighting with new generation, new technology, and this fast football that they're playing, and that's kind of kicking me to the back end of everything too. And maybe that is the reason why I haven't got in yet because not enough young players see me play in order to determine my worth. And if that's the situation, then they need to be quickly educated because I was one of the best that ever did it. And my peers who are in the Hall of Fame, and you ask any one of the players who played against me, from the Darryl Greens to Lawrence to Harry Carson to other pro Hall of Famers that's in there, they'll tell you I was a beast trying to tackle, trying to play against.
Yeah, 6'2",
And
and a bigger back,
yeah,
but to have that kind of speed. The thing
yeah.
that I think may help you, believe it or not, is when a team like Baltimore can't make it to the Super Bowl and they purposely seek out Derrick Henry because they feel like he's a missing piece. So I know that you're calling him a dinosaur in a lot of ways. He is that throwback, physical running back that was more in the 80s and early 90s. But if the Ravens are able to get over that hump and utilize that power running game, I think they're going to throw a spotlight back. I hate to use politics, but there are certainly politics when it comes to these things. And also, let's understand how many people are celebrating your greatness. You're in the St. Louis Cardinal Hall of Fame. You're in the Giants Top 100. You're in the Hall of Fame for Miami University. At every stop along the way, you've been great. So why would
And
this
I
be
and I made the wall of the Giant Stadium, Ring of Honor. I'm there, Ring of Honor.
Yes, sir.
So I'm on everybody's wall, but why can't I get to the hall?
Well, you're right. Well, we'll get that slogan out there. And I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but who would be the person that inducts you? Do you have somebody in mind that if you go in, they're going to present you? Do you have that person picked out already?
I do have people in mind, but I can't go that route yet because it's not happening yet. And I'm like Parcells say, you can't talk about what you haven't done yet. You got to talk about what you've done. So until it happens, it's going to be a mystery. But I do have ideas of individuals that I would love to actually present me when that time come about. So.
Well, I
Yeah.
feel that that's real talk, and we know Coach Parcells is always in the real. It's one of the great Super Bowl lines after it was done. He said, "Just remember, fellas, no one could ever take this away from you because you did it, and we're going to get to that moment because that's what the Hall of Fame represents: immortality. And when people go and they see football, those great halls of fame, they should remember a great running back who was the star of his time, played Division I basketball. And one of the greatest things of all is players that always were great long term, great teammates. The fact that you were so, destined for stardom, have this kind of short circuit, and then have the integrity and the professionalism and the care and just all the great things that make a great teammate, a great athlete, a great story, to come all the way back and be so prepared and show up in the Super Bowl like you did. Because I want to show you this one clip right here. So this is a clip from the Super Bowl. This is 1986, and I think it's important people see this.
I never thought I would get a chance to play, just being with those guys and being in the huddle. And when I had a chance to go on the field, they all looked at me and said, "Hey man, we're gonna get you in. You know, just come on." So I was very happy.
There goes Ottis Anderson. He's got a touchdown. Here's Parcells' payback to OJ for being patient.
I don't know if you heard that, but the great announcer of the Giants, Bob Papa, was saying that was Bill Parcells' kind of repayment to you in 1986, because even though you were a star, you were behind Joe Morris, not from a talent standpoint, but just from the fact that he's there, you can trade it in. Obviously, if it ain't pro, don't fix it. The Giants were on a pathway too, and they made sure within that blowout of Denver to give you that great touch. How hard was it when you were a star, you're, a short yardage back, and then you become the man again? What is that mental approach like, or was it just stay ready at all times mentality?
Right. Well, I'm gonna answer two of your questions, and I'm gonna go back to one that you hit me earlier with. And it's one thing I want to let people know. Not only did Joe Namath make a prediction about winning the Super Bowl and his team, when I was at Miami and I graduated in '79, and Kenny Johnson was my roommate, I made a prediction that if I played in the Super Bowl and I was a featured running back and it was played in the state of Florida, I win MVP. And that opportunity came in '89, but Flipper Anderson spoiled it when he caught that pass and ran it, because the Super Bowl, that year. Yep, the Super Bowl that year was at Joe Robbins Stadium, which was at Miami.
In Miami, right.
And I sat on my stool, and had my hands, my face in my hands, and I was like, man, I messed my prediction. And Maurice Carthon said, "What prediction you said?" I said to my roommate, if I played in the state of Florida and I was a featured running back, I win MVP. He said, "Well, the next Super Bowl is in Tampa, Florida." And I told Maurice, I said, "We are going, because it's my destiny." When we was lining up for that field goal out there in San Francisco, and Mark Ingram was next to me, and they're like, "Oh, Jesus, I hope you make it. I hope you make it." What God said, hey, don't worry about it. It's my destiny. And sure enough, it all worked out the way I said it would work out. Now, what happened to me was when I came out of Miami, I was 215 pounds. I ran a 4.440, and I was light. So my first 5-6 years, I didn't really put on any weight. And when I turned in '86, when I turned 30, at that point in time, I started getting bigger. Parcells kept me at 228 for about 4 years. And then he let me get up to 230, 232. And my running back style changed because of the position of what they had me to do. They featured me as a one back, and we didn't have a fullback a lot of times. So we ran inside plays. And that's why my running style changed, because I got bigger and my position of what they wanted me to do had changed. And that's why you saw the difference in my running style. But when I was first 7 years, when I was skinny and could run like a deer, I made a lot of people miss. I made a lot of people miss, and a lot of people did not want to catch me open field one-on-one because I embarrassed you.
Well, we're going to show some highlights right in here. You won't see them, but our audience will see them. But we're going to show some highlights of you running away from people, because, to your point, you are a different kind of back. But OJ, I just want to say it's been an absolute honor and privilege to talk to, in my mind, a Hall of Famer. We want to make it a reality. And I also want to show this kind of clip just so you know that this is a very passionate thing for OJ. It's a very passionate thing for us Giant fans. We believe he's there. But even kind of walking the city streets, I guess it's always at the forefront. Here's a quick little right on the streets of Manhattan, I think, with TMZ.
He belongs in the Hall of Fame.
Instead of me trying to put everybody else in the Hall of Fame, you put me in there.
There you go.
And if you check my credentials, I think I earned the right to be considered one. But one day they'll figure it out. And until then, we'll just keep on enjoying what I accomplished as a 14-year vet. But hopefully they'll figure it out. So
I remember that. I remember that, TNG. I remember that. But, I'm going to say this.
I wanted to say, a lot of people are in your corner.
Thank you. I'm gonna say this, and I know I probably said a lot already, but people don't speak about the charitable things that I've been affiliated with. I mean, I've done from March of Dimes, American Breast Cancer, Heart Association, cystic fibrosis. I've done.
I think you golf out like 7th or 8th year now. Don't you do a charitable golf outing?
I do a golf outing every year for kids who want to go off to school for college. I raise money for those kids to go off to school. This year was my 10th year anniversary of my foundation. But I appreciate all the accolades on the field that I accomplished, but what I've done in the community, what I've done for kids in general, what I've done for organizations who are trying to raise money for all kids organization, that's where I lay my head on now. That's where I feel that whether I made the Hall of Fame or not, I made the Hall of Fame for all of those people and all those different charities. So I'll always be in their minds and their blessing. And to me, that's a win-win. So if Canton don't get it right, that's all right.
Well, you already got it right.
That's all right.
I'm going to leave on this note. A Hall of Fame man by credentials, by deeds. A Hall of Fame player by credentials, by deeds. This man has earned the right. And if you're going to put butts in Canton, you want people to walk by and you want to read that bio and that legacy. And the things that this man has done tangibly, credibly, definitively on the field, tangibly, credibly, definitively off the field, the impact in kid lives, the impact in communities. He's not, he doesn't have 45 cameras out at his golf outing. He's doing it to help people. This is not a publicity stunt. This is a man who lives and breathes. Let's get him in the hall. I have calls to make. This man has already done his job. We need to get this going. I can't thank you enough for giving us your insights and your time today. Thank you as a Giant fan for the 2 Super Bowls that we have that you were participating in. And without a doubt, I'll always stand on this. We do not win Super Bowl 25 if O.J. Anderson is not the starting running back. And that's the truth. Thank you so much. MVP, appreciate you, man.
I thank you, and I thank you for reaching out to Pepper Johnson, my teammate, who said, "Hey, man, this guy here you want to talk to." So I appreciate Pep. I appreciate Pep doing the introduction, and I appreciate you staying firm about it and making it happen. So I applaud you for your time and your foresight to see injustice done and trying to help correct it.
Season ticket holder, man. Whatever do. Numbers are the eye test. This man deserves to be in.
Listen, if I happen to get in there, please comes, and you and all the ones who've been behind me will be acknowledged. Because I'm gonna make y'all all stand up. I don't care what they say about the hall. I'm gonna do it my way. So they better be ready. All my time ain't gonna be doing about none more than about all the people who make me and help me get to the point that I'm in. That's who all the accolades gonna be going to. Sure, my coaches and all that stuff was good, but it's gonna be guys like yourself, my fraternity, Omega Psi Phi fraternity, my childhood friends, my childhood coaches. It's gonna be those kind of people that's gonna get the accolades from me. So
Appreciate
thank you, man. Appreciate you.
God bless. Be well.
Yep.
Stay well. See you soon.
All right, bud.
So there you have it. That's our top 10 with JC, the greatest running backs of all time, as far as we're concerned. I hope you enjoyed our interview with Giants great O.J. Anderson. Yes, he did play for the Cardinals, but he himself is wearing that Giants hat. If he goes into the Hall of Fame, I think he's already declared he's going in as a Giant. NFL MVP, Super Bowl MVP as a Giant, NFL Comeback Player of the Year as a Giant, but just a great running back, certainly. Just kind of having a little fun with the Giants Cardinals thing in the St. Louis Football Cardinals Hall of Fame. Well deserved. In the Giants Ring of Honor, number 51, their top 100 of all time. And listen, we want to hear from you. What would your list be? Who would you take off? Who would you put on? Would you agree that we've shown the numbers and the career accolades that warrant O.J. Anderson being in the Hall of Fame? And want to thank O.J. Anderson again. Shout out my guy, Pepper Johnson, who helped organize that interview, and certainly hope to have Pepper on our episode in the future. Until next time, love y'all. Top 10 with JC. See you soon.